Welcome, everyone, to episode 1 here in the U.S. and Canada of Developer Direct. This is David I, and with me here in the studio is Anders Olsen.
Hello.
And also on the line is Al Manarino from I guess, New York, right?
Hello, yes.
Here is the hashtag and the Twitter account at EMBTDdirect. And you can also send an email to developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com. Hashtag EMBTDD is the hashtag to add to any comments or links or anything else so that everybody else can follow the Twitter feed. This is the schedule for Q2 starting today, April 19th. This is the welcome to the new season. So welcome, everybody. It's great to have you all here. Each week, we'll start with any news that's happening, new things that are happening here at Embarcadero or in the world of development. And we have a theme for each week, so you can look down the schedule. That schedule is also included on the registration page that got you here. So this week, we're going to talk a little bit and show some demos about RAD iOS app dev and show you a few things that you can do with Delphi and iOS. Here's the agenda for today. Again, welcome and news, RAD Studio, talk about RAD Studio, multi-device, true native, rapid prototyping, some demonstrations, the summary. We'll do Q&A and give you some additional information. So let's get started with the news. Just want to remind everyone that the RAD Studio XE4 product announcement webinar is next Wednesday, April 24th, and it takes place 3 different times on Wednesday the 24th. 6 a.m. Pacific time, which would be 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Right, and what do we add? 7, so that would be 1300 UTC or Greenwich Mean Time, and then again at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 1800 UTC, and I can't do the other. 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and add 7, so that's really 00 on the 25th UTC. So this will be the whole product management team and a bunch of us next Wednesday with the formal RAD Studio XE3 product announcement webinar. There's a short URL at the bottom that you can use to register for the event. You can register for 1, 2, or all 3 of the webinars next Wednesday. So you want to hear everything about XE4, availability, pricing, details, more technology that we haven't been previewing over the last few months. Come next Wednesday, April 24th. This week, we put out a press release. We have now joined the Standard C++ Foundation, which you'll find at isocpp.org. This is a nonprofit organization that has members from the Standard ISO C++ committee, Bjarne Stustrup, Herb Sutter, and others. It has a bunch of sponsoring companies. You'll see their logos on the About page on isocpp.org. Here's a quote from Herb Sutter, who actually works at Microsoft in their C++ and compiler world. I think he's the head of that, but he's also the chairman and president of the Standard C++ Foundation. And we are, committed to the standard. One of our team members from R&D is at the C++ committee meeting in Bristol in UK this week. And that you can find the press release using this short URL at the bottom, or you can find it on the news page off the Embarcadero homepage. There's also an on-demand for C++ in the multi-device enterprise. It's a webinar I did last month, and I go through how you build Windows and Mac applications with one code base, how you work with SOAP servers and web services and multi-tier and SQL databases that you find in your enterprise. And there's the on-demand webinar replay URL at the end. I'll create a PDF of these slides and put them up in Code Central so you can download them, and I'll put a link on my blog and on the Twitter feed so that you can grab all of these URLs and so on. But those are there. 2 weeks ago, Marco and JT and Serena and Anders also did a multi-device enterprise with Delphi. Showing the same capabilities that you could do with Delphi, and added the iOS part of Delphi that we're going to talk about today and into the future. And there's an on-demand replay that you can watch and get to if you missed that one. So again, SOAP services, REST calls, multi-tier, database access, and so on. Upcoming event, if you are anywhere in the US and you want to spend 2 days learning from all about Delphi technology, the hardcore stuff with Bob Swart and Kerry Jensen. They have a 2-day event in Chicago, May 6th and 7th. You can get there by www.delphideveloperdays.com. It's at a hotel. What is it? The Holiday Inn Express Hotel and Suites right near the O'Hare Airport.
Yep.
And also Anders is going to be there on the 6th, giving a presentation in front of the attendees of the 2-day training. It's 2 days of hardcore technical training. It's a paid event for the 2 days of training. They give you, I don't know, a book of like 600-700 pages of technical information and how-tos on all sorts of really great Delphi technology, multi-threading, all sorts of stuff, 64-bit world, and so on. If you're in that greater Chicago area, Anders is also going to be hosting an evening event that is free for everyone, but you need to register. There's a link at the bottom so that he can make sure there's enough food. What is it? Is it pizza or Chinese food or what?
Either or, and I don't think we've decided yet. It depends what if we find a good place to get it from.
Chicago pizza? Come on.
Oh, I know.
Okay. All right. Well, in any case, just to make sure that that we have enough food for the evening event, register and then come to the Holiday Inn Express in the evening. Anyone who attends the 2-day training can stay for that as well. But if you just want to stop by and see Anders and see Bob Swart and Kerry Jensen and talk with other Delphi developers, come to the evening community event at the same hotel, Holiday Inn Express. It says, Jeff saying, get deep dish pizza from Pizzeria Uno or Pizzeria Duo. All right, so that's in the Q&A log. So now you know.
Excellent. I've heard of those.
Okay, where to get some good pizza. Also reminding everybody that FireDAC is available. FireDAC is our new multi-device data access set of components for Delphi C++ Builder and also for RAD Studio. If you have Enterprise Edition of Delphi C++ or RAD Studio, it's a free download. Go to your registered user downloads page. If you have Pro version, you can buy an add-on pack for FireDAC, and all of that is mentioned down here on the FireDAC page if you want to go and take a look at that. It's also available on the RAD offers page. I'll give you that link in a little bit. This is the future for database access. We still have DB Express. It's still there. BDE is even still there. But FireDAC is the future. We'll have FireDAC on every platform that Delphi and C++ Build are on, including mobile device platforms in the future. So FireDAC is the future. We have lots of webinar content and videos about FireDAC that's available for you, and there's a whole bunch of links off the FireDAC page. It's a replacement for DB Express with much more power, higher performance, and a lot of cool new features like in-memory data sets, for example, and so on. There's all sorts of other news coming up, and there's additional live events. Christine Anders and Al are putting together some city stops in Q2 for US and Canada. So the best way to keep up to date with that is to keep checking the events page on Embarcadero.com. You'll get emails and other things, and we'll put them on the Twitter feed as those dates and locations get confirmed. And there's also, if you're logged in from somewhere else in the world, we've got events happening all over the world. I'm going to be in Nyborg, Denmark on April 30th and May 1st for a 2-day workshop, programming workshop. And let's see, first, second. And then in London for an event on May 3rd. So there's lots of different events happening all over the world in Q2, and you can stay up to date on the events page. All right, let's get to it. Talk a little bit about RAD Studio. There's 11 words you have to memorize. Well, I forgot a hyphen in one. Or if you believe hyphenated words count as one word, then there's 9 words you only have to think about, trying to make it as simple as possible. When you think about RAD Studio, when you think about C++, when you think about Delphi, the first is multi-device app development. That's what RAD Studio, with the IDE, with the libraries, the FireMonkey framework, the native code optimizing compilers, all of that says you can build applications with one code base for multiple devices. True native apps. We're using true native code, optimized code for the Intel processors and soon for the ARM processors. And while you're developing your application, you know, if you're a Delphi or C++ or RAD Studio customer, you're in the IDE, you're designing your user interface, you're prototyping the user interface. If you use the prototype bind source as part of visual live binding, you're even prototyping the data that's coming from a data set maybe in the future that you have the specification for. And you can actually build running applications, hit run, connect them to the device, and so on. So 11 words to think about if you think, what is our messaging? What is our strategy with RAD Studio? It's all about multi-device app development, building true native code applications, and being able to do on-device rapid prototyping as part of your development methodology. So regardless of the platform today or in the future, today it's Win32, Win64, Mac OS X. That's what RAD Studio lets you build. With HTML5 Builder, we also get to all sorts of additional mobile platforms. If you want to use the HTML5 markup, CSS3, and JavaScript as your development environment, and maybe PHP or a Delphi or C++ data step server on the back end, you can hook all of that together as part of RAD Studio to build all different kinds of desktop, server, mobile, and web applications. Again, when we talk about multi-device and true native, when we say multi-device, we also include PCs and Macintoshes. If you think about demos I've done in the past, some of you have seen me, I carry around a Samsung Slate running Windows 8. And it's a device. It's got an accelerometer. It's got an orientation sensor. It's got a light sensor. So yes, it's got a Core i5 Intel processor. So you might think, well, it's a PC desktop replacement, or it's a notebook or ultrabook or netbook replacement. Well, all of them are devices. So in our world, when we say devices, anything you would do computing on, and we're extending that out into the mobile world here really soon with the product announcement webinars next Wednesday. We're giving you the frameworks, we're giving you the runtime libraries to connect to everything that is available in those capabilities. And if you sat in on the Code Rage sessions with Darren, he even showed you how we built a new sensor-based and device-based framework in the system dot whatever library. And so whenever you see system dot in front of an include file, a header file, or a unit, you'll know that that is framework agnostic that can be used whether you're doing VCL or whether you're doing FireMonkey. And of course, it's been extended to support the devices and the capabilities like cameras and microphones, orientation sensors, location sensors, and so on. You'll see some of that today again. So a lot of that work that was done in EXE3 to create these framework independent sets of libraries was built originally not only for today's machines that we use, but for devices in the future as well. One code base means one, and one team means you save money, you save time. You build it once, recompile it for the different platforms. So instead of having separate teams working on Macintosh, separate team working on Windows, separate team working on mobile, separate team working on somewhere else, you can build it all inside of RAD Studio. Means less complexity, less rewriting of code. You might have to stick certain if-defs. We've also give you the platform services where you can query platform services. That was another part of what was put in EXE3 as a framework agnostic piece. So you can query to see, does this platform have a menu service? And mobile devices usually don't have pull-down menus. Does it have a mouse service? Unless it's like, well, I don't know about OneNote maybe from Samsung with the little stylus, but even that's a tap and touch and swipe kind of interface. But on Windows, on Mac, we have mice and touchpads and things. So the platform services, and there's still the TOS version record structure where you can query the chip you're running on, the operating system, the build of the operating system, the service pack number, and so on. And then, as I mentioned, when we're in the IDE, and this goes back to Delphi 1, you're prototyping the user interface while you're building your application. You're writing some logic underneath. Maybe you're stubbing out certain functions. Now with visual light bindings and the prototype bind source, as I mentioned, you can even prototype the data access so that you can build a lot of your application, show it to your customer, interact with your users and customers, and continue developing. You'll see more and more of that, not only today, but over time, as we continue to allow you to connect with databases, connect with a data set, and then ultimately get to where you're going to deploy your application and using the exact same set of code. So those are the 11 words to remember as it relates to RAD Studio. A lot of this comes about because we've upgraded and moved to a next generation of compiler architecture. our C++, 64-bit, and our Delphi for ARM compiler that we've been previewing this past quarter are based on the llvm.org. LLVM is a compiler infrastructure open source project that's being used by a whole bunch of companies, including Apple Computer. We've taken the front end of our compilers and languages and hooked them into this open intermediate format structure that then uses the LLVM optimizing backend. It's a multi-phased optimization structure, and it's documented. You can go to llvm.org to get to it. And that allows us to then generate code for Intel processors and ARM processors. And in the future, if other processors start showing up in multi-device environments, if there's a code emitter that's part of LLVM, then we just get it by hooking our front ends in again through OpenIR in LLVM to get to those backend. So this new compiler architecture with the enhancements to FireMonkey, with the enhancements in the lower level framework, agnostic framework systems that we've added into the runtime libraries for Delphi and C++, all of this gets us moving faster, because people always ask, well, how are you going to react when some new device comes out? What are you going to do when Apple or somebody adds some new capability, or Microsoft adds a new capability or supports a new chip? With this architecture, we can move forward very fast. And again, opening and refactoring all of the runtime library, adding to capabilities of FireMonkey, we can also move very fast. This next part, we're going to spend a little time now on Delphi exe4 for iOS. So here's an example just showing a couple of iPhones with some native controls on them and the look and feel that matches what you see if you have an iPhone, with rounded areas, with list boxes, and so on. We're going to spend a little time demonstrating a bunch of different things here. Delphi for FireMonkey on iOS uses native style, generating optimized native code that runs on the iOS device, lets you get access and use the GPU that's there, all of that. They're same kind of components of T-button, T-list box, and so on, but we've added components like T-switch, so you can have that nice looking on-off switch. There's still T-checkbox, so if you like checking on and off, that's fine too, but there's a T-switch, and it has a on-click and an on-switch method, event handler, so you have full control. All the gesture work that was done to add gestures and actions to FireMonkey is leveraged in FireMonkey on iOS as well, because of course, when you're on an iPad or an iPhone, you do a lot of gestures. You swipe gestures, you do tap, tap and hold, all these different pinch and zoom, and Anders has demos for all of that stuff. The workflow is very similar to what you were doing in Delphi and C++ before. You're in the Windows IDE, you're building your projects, you can test them on Windows, you can then compile them for Mac. That was in exe3, where you have a platform assistant server running on your Macintosh, so the IDE could talk to the Mac, move the application you built over, run it over on the Mac, debug it on the Mac. The same thing now for iOS. For iOS, you have devices that you plug into your Macintosh. Xcode knows about those devices. There are libraries for iOS. There's a simulator for iOS that's part of the Xcode install. The only other thing you need to do is install the command line tools, and I'll go through that and show you what I've done on my machine here in a moment. So in exe4 and Delphi iOS, it's sitting in the exe4 IDE, the RAD Studio Delphi C++ IDE, doing all your development, setting breakpoints, evaluating memory, looking at the CPU viewer, and everything else is just a conduit through the PA server, which then gets you to your simulator or to your device that's plugged in your Macintosh. Now, why a Macintosh? It's an Apple requirement. We don't have Windows-based tools for things that the Macintosh and Xcode do, in particular sandboxing and code signing your applications to get to the ultimate device when you want to deploy or get to the Apple Store. In the case of our worlds here, I'm going to switch here in a quick moment. A bunch of us have MacBook Pros where we run the Macintosh operating system, and then we use VMware Fusion for the Mac, or you can use Parallels or other things to run Windows as a guest operating system on Mac OS X. Let me switch and share my screen over here. I'm going to go to my screen. This is my Macintosh, and I've got the PA server running here. That's an install package that you get as part of exe4, and you just copy it over to your Macintosh and install it, and then you can start it up. It sits over in the Macintosh applications folder, and down here is the RAD PA server. I created an alias and put it on my desktop so that I can just start it anytime I'm on my Macintosh. And then I'll switch over to my Windows machine. And my Windows machine, I'm running the IDE. And I've started the IDE, and there's a new start page as part of the welcome page. In the past, we had your recent projects, news, resources, documentation links. There's a new thing called Start Here. And so Start Here has some information about how to get set up, how to start, and how to build cool stuff. So I did a couple of videos. One is just how to set up your environment, and then how to build your first multi-device Windows 32, Win64, Mac, and iOS project with one code base. And then there's a whole bunch of code snippets that ship with the product and are also available on SourceForge. These are short little demos to show you specific capabilities. There's a video. You can actually click and open the project right from the Start Here page. So lots of different things that are there. And let me just start very quickly, because these Al and Anders are going to show you all sorts of great things. So if I say new FireMonkey mobile application, Delphi, there's 8 templates, project templates that you start with, that you can start with. One could be a blank application, a header footer application, something with tabs, and it tells you a little bit at the bottom. So here I'll just say, let's create a header footer, find a place to put it, that's fine, and overwrite whatever was there before. Now, if you've never set up a target using the PA server to get to Macintosh or get to devices, then a help wizard will pop up, which takes you through the steps. So that first video, I take you through the different steps of setting up the remote connection for your target platform. Over here on the target platform, where there could be Win32, in fact, I can say add platform, Win32. And then I also have the simulator and device get put in there automatically for you as part of the template project that's built. Now I have a profile for my simulator, and I can right mouse click and look at the connection string. Platform OS 10. You could also have remote debugging of Windows platform targets you're trying to do. The name of my machine or IP address, a port number, that's the default 64211. And if I had some password that I needed to talk to my PA server, if you didn't want anybody else connecting to your PA server, I didn't put a password in, so it's sitting over here. You can test the connection to make sure you can talk from the ID to your Macintosh. And once you've done that, it's all good. The other thing I should show you is there's also an SDK manager, because in iOS world, there are different versions of the iOS SDK. I think, Anders or Al, we support what, from version iOS 5 and above?
5.1.
5.1, okay, 5.1. So I have a iPad and iPhone that are running 6.1.3, so I have the 6.1 SDK loaded. And that information is part of connecting via Xcode and your device to show you where it'll tell you what SDK your device is using, and make sure that it has the link to the right libraries over on your device. And those links are down here. The different library paths get sent from the PA server over the Mac back over to the ID, so it knows how to link with and how to deploy applications that you might build. Then over on the Macintosh, I already have Xcode installed. You can download this from Apple. I have Xcode, I think 4.6.1. I think there's an update to 4.6.2 that's available now. So I have Xcode, and you just need to verify by looking at the preferences and look at downloads on the preferences of Xcode that you have the command line tools installed. And I have them already installed. You can also install other versions of the iOS simulator besides the one that got grabbed when you first plugged your iOS device in. And so you can see that those are installed in case I need to use them to test on 5.1 or 6.0. The other thing you can do is go under Window in Xcode Organizer and make sure that your device is plugged in, which mine isn't, because I was charging it. So I'm going to plug it in.
So there's a good question here in the window. I see mention of a T web browser in that opening window. Does that mean that we'll be getting a FireMonkey cross-platform web browser in the future?
Right now we have the T web browser for iOS.
Yeah, and it's our goal to make that multi-device in the future.
Absolutely. This little green dot just reminded me, and I always check at least one time that my iPad is now connected. Some of us also use a utility, use AirPlay to send the display or the device information from your device and have it show up on your Macintosh. So whatever I do on my iPad or my iPhone will show up on my desktop. So once I have all of that set up, here's my example. I can just compile and run this application, and I'll run it first on this. Oh, Windows is running first, so there it is running on Windows. Let's go and activate the iOS simulator and hit run. And then you'll notice after it compiles, now it's deploying from the ID to the PA server. And here comes my application up, iOS simulator, which lets you do things like rotate left and right, do a shake gesture, and so on. And then finally, if I go back to the IDE, and then I can select the device, hit run, or I could set a breakpoint. I don't have any code right now, but I put a button, put a breakpoint in the button event handler. It would set a breakpoint. I can see the CPU viewer and so on. So it's linking. We're talking to a command line tool to do the code signing. So it's saying code sign wants to sign using my developer key. I have a developer key that's all outlined in the how to get your system set up. You have to get a developer key through Apple, get an Apple account. And then when that's done, over here, there's my little icon called header footer. And here's the application coming up, which is massive, and it has a title showing again how to do some of the setup. There's much more in my video that's in the Start Here world, and it's also in the documentation.
We should have it all getting started, what's new in XE4, and including all the setup you're doing right now.
And actually, when you try to deploy something and PA server is not connected, or when PA server is failing to do something, you will get wizards that guide you through how to set it up correctly and get going.
So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Al.
So let me once again say hello and welcome you all to this Developer Direct session. My name's Al Manarino, and I'm one of the Embarcadero software consultants. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through some of the Delphi for iOS and database access possibilities. So first we say Delphi for iOS is enterprise ready. So what do we really mean by that? So Delphi for iOS is ready to access embedded either Embarcadero's Interbase or SQLite databases, and we're also enterprise database ready to access remote SQL databases using our DataSnap technology. So by that we mean any what I'm going to call a DataSnap client. So it could either be native, web, and or mobile. They can all connect to a DataSnap service, access all of the server methods, access to remote databases, and return those results back to the calling client. So that's really cool. So as far as iOS local databases, so there's two databases that I know of, either SQLite and or Embarcadero's Interbase to go or Interbase Lite database that you can embed inside of your iOS device. So if you need an embedded, fully featured, secure and encrypted, that's already been accepted into the Apple Store, that has full SQL 92 RDBMS support, and is also very fast with multi-read and write, then Interbase is really a great database to put inside of your iOS device. So David spoke about Visual Live Binding. So with Delphi for iOS, we can use Visual Live Bindings for rapid prototyping and binding controls to our database columns, and binding controls to other controls such as list boxes, edit boxes, and labels. So, for example, we have this master detail recipes application. We drop two list boxes onto the form. We have our recipes table. So we're saying for this recipe here, for list box 2, we want the items text attribute to be connected to the recipe name in our database, and then for the detail, when we switch to another tab, the detail for list box 1 is going to show these attributes out of the table and populate the list box. So very easy to do rapid prototyping using Visual Live Bindings. So multi-tier development using DataSnap. So with DataSnap, we can access remote services, and we can connect to DataSnap services from an iOS device. So why is multi-tier on iOS important? Because on these iOS devices, you're really limited to having RDBMS client libraries on the iOS device. So for example, you can't deploy a Mac dylib file, and that's the Mac equivalent of a DLL in an app package for the App Store. So you really have limited database connectivity options on an iOS device. But the good news is if you use a DataSnap server with your Delphi for iOS client, you can use that as your unified conduit to any backend database. So that's really cool. So if we think about mobile plus DataSnap plus databases, so mobile devices and or web pages, they all know how to connect to a DataSnap service. They can all access the business methods and or the database procedures, and they can all connect to the backend databases and return those SQL results back to the mobile device and or the web page. And in addition, with DataSnap, you can also add encryption and compression filters to keep the data safe and secure as it's passing over the wire. So both Embarcadero's HTML5 Builder product and Delphi for iOS can create these standalone mobile apps, and they all know how to connect to a DataSnap service. So for example, here we have a Delphi for iOS client and an HTML5 Builder, a created web client. They both know how to connect to this DataSnap server. They all know how to call the get records function, and they all know how to return those results back to the calling devices. So that's all really cool. All right, so at this point, I want to take you into, let's call it RAD Studio XE4 for iOS, and we want to take a look at two iOS database access applications. And one's going to use the embedded interbase database, and the other one is going to use DataSnap for remote database access. So this top example is going to be a Delphi for iOS client that's using the embedded interbase iOS embedded and encrypted database, and this bottom one is going to be a Delphi iOS client connecting to a remote DataSnap server to access a remote SQL database. So here I am I'm in RAD Studio XE4. What we're looking at right now is a U.S. state capitals trivia app, and I'm happy to say that this app has already been accepted into the Apple Store, and it uses an embedded and encrypted interbase database. So the cool news here is, for all of you Delphi developers, you already know how to do this, so you can reuse and leverage all of your existing Delphi programming skills and create these really awesome iOS applications. So this is a standard Delphi multi-form application. So I have a main form, I have a quiz form. So the main form is going to let me know, how many questions of trivia do I want to ask. And once I select that, the quiz will actually ask me the question and give me possible answers to the question. Certain options I can set. David I spoke about the nice switch component. Switch on and off here. If I answer correctly, I'll get yes. And at the end of my quiz, I'll get a score. So how this application actually runs. And in addition to this, I also have a data module, which is right here. So this data module is where I define my embedded interbase database. So the flow of this app is I start in the main page. Once I select how many questions I want to ask, I go to my quiz form. And inside my quiz form, here's where I can set my attributes for my embedded encrypted interbase database. So I can set its database property, username, password, and the system encryption password. And I'm also happy to say that this interbase encrypted embedded interbase database has already passed submission to the Apple App Store. So as you're looking at the code, it's the same Delphi code you already know. As David showed you in the project manager, I can either deploy this to an iOS simulator, or I can deploy it to an iOS device, or I can run it here as a Win32-bit application. If I look at its deployment manager, we see the interbase database right here. Gets deployed directly onto my iOS device, including the interbase license key that might be needed. So all of it's self-contained when I deploy it either to my iOS device or my actual simulator. So just like David showed you, I'm going to set this to my iOS simulator. I want to set it over to my iPhone, and I'm going to go ahead and run it. So just like David showed you, we're going to build it here on Windows. We pass it over to the platform assist, sends it over to my iOS device, launches it in my iOS device, and there it is. So click on 5 questions, sends it over to quiz, makes the connection to the embedded interbase database, and it works great. All right, so that was a quick example on how to use an embedded interbase encrypted database on an iOS device. Next application I want to show you is a iOS DataSnap example. So this iOS example, this is going to be a Delphi iOS client. So this is going to be a Delphi iOS client that's going to connect to my backend remote DataSnap server and I wanted to access the SQL database on my backend database. So I'm going to call this my company directory application that needs to search for office phone numbers via people's names. Now the backend can be any supported database, and the communication platform is going to be DataSnap. So now an important part of any mobile application is the sharing of content from this middle tier, in our case DataSnap, into a format that can be easily accessible via any remote application. So whether you're running it as a desktop native application connecting to this DataSnap service or any type of smartphone, we all want to be connected to this middle tier layer, access the business methods, get to the backend data, and return the results back to the calling client. Now, DataSnap is a technology that's either in Delphi and or C++ Builder Enterprise. So for this application, I have both a DataSnap server built using Delphi, and this is my C++ version of the same server. So those of you who are unfamiliar with DataSnap, we give you a great wizard for it. So I went to Start, New, Other. I started with this DataSnap server. I created a DataSnap REST application, ran through the wizard. By running through the wizard, it creates this form unit, and this allows me to start and stop the DataSnap service. Also creates a server methods unit, and inside of the server methods unit, here's where I added my SQL connection to get to my backend database. In this case, I'm using an interbase server backend database, but you can see any of the supported databases will work here also. So it could be Sybase, DB2, Firebird, MS SQL, MySQL, Oracle, SQLite, or any ODBC connection will also work also. So in addition to the SQL connection, I dropped in a query component. And from this query component, when it connects to the back end, I simply say select everything from the employee table and order it by its full name. And the last component I dropped in here was my dataset provider, and I linked its property to my query component. So that's it. That's all I had to do on the DataSnap server side. So now at this point, I can start up my DataSnap service. A very lightweight process. I can even deploy this onto a cloud service like an Amazon or an EC2 cloud and have it connecting that way. Start the DataSnap service. When you build these DataSnap services, there's an option to add a couple of test methods just to make sure it's working. So that hit the backend DataSnap service, ran its reverse string, and came back. So that's working fine. So now that my DataSnap service is working, let me bring up the client. All right, so this is my, so I created this, just like David showed you, file new, Delphi, FireMonkey, iOS mobile application. So I started with that, and I created what I'm going to call this 3-tabbed form app. So if I looked at its tab components, it's got 3 tabs. If you look at its tab control, the first tab is my login screen. So when this thing fires up, I want to be able to get a login screen to connect to my backend DataSnap server, the IP address and the port it's running on. And then once I connect, I want to bring up my second tab, which is going to be a list box. That's going to display all of the employees in my database. And then when I select an employee, I want to bring up the final list, the final tab, which is going to give me the employee and the phone extension of that employee. So to do all of this, I also added a data module. And just like we did on the DataSnap server, I have my SQL connection. But this case, for driver, I'm using DataSnap as my driver. And I also added a dataset provider connection. And the only one thing I need to set on this property is its server class name, because the good news is you can have multiple classes on the DataSnap server, and that's very useful in providing a business lead functional approach to your code. So now that we have the data connected, all I now need to do is to connect to the server and show the data. And for that, I used a client dataset. So I added a client dataset, and I implemented the client dataset to collect the data. So now for rapid prototyping, to make my life easier, I use Visual Live Bindings. So if I go up and view my Visual Live Bindings, I said, for this form here, so here's my client dataset pointing to employee. I created this form with edit box, first name, last name, phone number, and I simply said for each of these components, I want the text for the edit box of first name to be equal to the first name, last name to last name, phone extension to phone extension, I also have a label on here. I want the full name of the employee up here, and an edit to show me the ID of the employee. And that's really cool. I can do that. So now that we have our DataSnap server running, just like I did before, I can either target this to an actual iOS device or the simulator. I'm going to set it to the simulator and run this. So the same process, builds on Windows. We use Platform Assist to go to Xcode to sign and package the application, and then it gets deployed out to my iOS device. And assuming I got the correct IP address of the DataSnap server on my Windows box, it will connect, hit the backend data, bring the results. Let's see the phone number for Jennifer. And here's the phone number for Jennifer. So that works flawlessly. So that was my quick overview on what's possible with Delphi for iOS for database access. So at this point, let me turn it over to Anders, and he'll show you some more really cool capabilities of what's possible with Delphi for iOS.
You had a question in there or no?
Yeah, Robert just asked with FireDuck components, it has a memory-based data set, and then there's T-client data set. Well, you can still use T-client data set with FireDuck. There is the memory data set. For me, the FireDuck memory data set, it's very quick to switch between them and to assign metadata and data to a memory data set. So I would prefer to use the FireDuck memory data set, and then you could still have a client data set connected to it as well.
So I'm going to run through a whole bunch of what we call snippets here. As you get the product, it will be in the samples category in their separate iOS code snippets directory. They're also available on SourceForge. I believe David will show the links for that later. Let's start out with the accelerometer example. So here we have an example that can show a whole bunch of different things. We have a motion sensor that allows us to show a whole bunch of data. We have a switch to turn on or off the accelerometer. Let's go ahead and run this on the simulator to see just what happens when you actually run this on the simulator, et cetera, et cetera. So these are
there's shake, but that's a gesture. That's
shake
not
is
an
a gesture.
accelerometer simulation.
Shake is a gesture that's detected by iOS specifically, of course, using the accelerometer and the gyro and all those kind of things, but it is specifically a gesture that gets generated. So with that, let's go ahead and run it on the device. And like I said, I have Reflector over here. We're going to deploy the application over to and we turn on the accelerometer. And we see now that we have acceleration values for X, Y, and Z. So you can't, of course, see that I'm wiggling my iPad around, but you get different values.
Hold on.
For the, you're going to show us very simply this demo, of course, has a component on it, the motion sensor component. We set the labels to non-visible by default, and then depending on what sensors we have available and what properties we have available from those sensors, we enable that as we turn on the switch. Let's go to the next one, which will be the camera roll.
How about date picker?
Oh, we can do the date pickers.
Yeah.
I'll do the camera roll first since I loaded it already.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to go ahead and roll that on the simulator because it doesn't have any images in it, so it's not interesting. Go ahead and run it on the device. This application actually uses a default action, which is to load an image from my photo library. And that's all it does. And that's the point of all these snippets. They're very, very simple. They use a component and one or two methods. The IB Lite one uses a couple more and a little bit more code, but in general, they're very, very simple, just to show one concept. So here we are on my device. I can access my camera roll. I've already previously given allowance to the device or to the app to use the camera roll. First time I run it on a brand new machine, it will come up and ask me for permission to use my camera roll. And of course, my kids have been using this device. So here's one picture that they took the other day. We can use that picture and simply assign it to the image on the form. So if we go back here and see what we did here, we have a button that uses an action, which is take photo from library action. Okay, where's this thing sitting? Must be sitting here in the action. So here's my action. This is a standard action, take photo from library action. And actually, if I go in here what I can do is I can say new action or new standard action. New standard action has the media library ones. Take photo from library. This is the one we're using. Take photo from camera and show share sheet action. Those are the
I can't say
ones.
that fast. Show share sheet.
Show share sheet action. Yeah, it's
Is
you
that
have to be careful.
onomatopoeia? Is that it? That's the phrase in English? Sounding the same? Show share sheet. I got C's in English, so, but A's in programming.
Oh, there you go. Okay, so
Date picker.
date picker. Yeah, let's pick date picker. Here's date picker. Let's do that one on the simulator. It'll work the same on the device. Where's my simulator? There's my simulator. Still has the audio recording up here. It's going to launch the application here in a second. Here's my date. So I'm going to pick a date, which is simply February 13th, 2014. Hit OK. And it said, pick Thursday, February 13th, 2014. It's a little, let's see here. Can I rotate this guy? There we go.
Yes.
Okay, this is just a calendar edit. We have it set to, let's see, there's an on-change event here somewhere. Yep, on-change. So when we change it, we simply pick.
Put that space in there.
There's the space that should be in there. They're right there.
Okay.
Save
So
that
same
up for
exact
later.
code. It's the same calendar edit component as Windows, Macintosh. Just on the simulator and the device, the implementation is the native control on the iOS device, which
Correct.
is that smooth scrolling little rolling wheel of month, day, year, right?
Correct. And you will actually notice here that in Windows, in the Delphi IDE here, we have a 4-digit year. Well, that happens to be the short date format on Windows. On the device, it's not a leading 0, and it's only 2-digit year. So you'll see some slight differences like that.
Well, in the
Actually,
ID, we're using the Windows version of the component because we need to be able to do that in the form designer on Windows.
exactly.
So it does the right thing. FireMonkey does the right thing on the right device, on Windows, on Macintosh, on iOS. It's going to give you that not only true native code, but it's going to give you a native look and feel. And you can also use bitmap controls and bitmap styles to have pixel for pixel.
There you go. There you go. And why don't we show the custom picker as well?
And then maybe finish with location.
Yeah, here we have a custom picker. We do that on the simulator, just using a combo box. And we'll see the scroll wheel come up here and we pick an item.
Again, doing the right thing on the device. And on Windows, combo box, right thing. But the control is the control you're used to, which is T combo box.
That's correct.
Yep. My favorite's location. One of my favorite.
Your favorite is location?
One of my favorite.
Okay.
I mean, gyroscope, orientation.
Let's go with location. So here we have a location sensor. And we have a T web browser. That's actually the T web browser. Sorry, this is the location sensor. It has a location changed event. On the location events, we simply go ahead and grab the latitude and longitude and present it in the UI. We also navigate in the web browser to correct Google Maps URL so that we display the location. So on simulator, what do you think is going to happen, David?
There's, I don't know. Can you key in? It used to be, I thought you could key in a longitude, latitude in a text area somewhere in the simulator so it would simulate it, but I don't really know.
You can, but I realized this morning that when I was getting ready for this, I had left the simulator on a simulated test drive. So we're actually driving down 280.
Perfect.
Let's go ahead and run it on the device and show you where we really are. And of course, this is something that you can set here in the simulator. You can set the location. Debug. Location. I've simulated a freeway drive. I can put in a custom location if I wanted to as well. So that's what you were talking about, latitude, longitude. So here we are. I hit the turn on the location sensor. It's going to ask me, can I please use your location? Okay. Now I get my latitude and longitude, and I'm going to get a Google map over Wi-Fi, and I see that I'm fairly close to where I'm actually at. There's a trigger distance and accuracy settings that I can, set up and down. And yeah, I actually wanted to show one more, which is the share sheet. This is something that's new in iOS 6 that we are supporting. So let's go ahead and run this share sheet. If you remember, in my action list, I had a share sheet action. So that is exactly what this application is doing. It just has an action list. It has that share sheet action hooked up to the share button. And here we can say take photo, do one of these infinite ones. Take the picture, use it, it puts it on the image. Then I can hit share over here, and this is the share sheet. I can mail it, I can put it in a tweet, I can put it on Facebook, I can assign it as a picture for a contact in my contact list. I can save it to the camera roll, I can print it to a printer over AirPrint, or I can copy it and basically duplicate it.
And those are just standard actions. You don't have to write a ton of code.
No, this is just a share sheet action that takes care of that for you.
Yep.
Yeah, and you see actually an example that I shared. If you follow the EMBTDD tag, you can see when I was preparing, there's a picture of David I there.
Wow.
That's a lot of source code, Anders.
Yeah, I know.
Jeez.
So essentially, the before execute of the show share sheet action, make sure that we have a bitmap assigned to the show share sheet action.bitmap property, and what it does is assigns the image.bitmap property that's on the screen. The photo, when you take a picture with a camera, the way it works is when the picture is ready, when the camera has taken the picture for you, the on-did finish taking event fires, and that's where we go in and assign the picture from the camera. This is the camera picture. We assign it to the image on the form. And those are the 2 lines of code in that application.
2 lines of code to build your own Instagram.
Now you just need some
The Instagram client.
filters with some effects, right? And
Exactly. All that is available. Still, everything you do in FireMonkey with filters, with effects, transitions, all that stuff you can do.
there's lots of snippets in here. We have to go to the launch webinar to do the rest of them, or the...
there was a question that came up about, let's see, it was about FireDuck components memory data set versus client data set, and I said you can use them both. So you can still have a data set provider talking to a client data set that's getting it from a memory data set, or you can use memory data set directly. Robert was asking, he said, more of a comment, so nice to see the same control on multiple platforms, like native version of it. Are there controls like that? And I said, well, where possible, FireMonkey in the RTL is using APIs, it's using native components where it can. In some cases, we use bitmap styles. You still have access to call into the operating system, whether it's Macintosh or iOS or Windows. Here's the links, but you can also just search SourceForge RAD Studio demos and look for RAD Studio _XE4. Just a reminder about the next Wednesday, 3 times, 6 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And then that translates, and there's the registration page. So here's what the registration page is. Here's the different times, UTC, Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Here's what that little description. Here's what we're going to cover. And you can register, and you can register for one at a time, but you can go back and hit the back arrow and choose the second one, and back arrow, choose the third one. Next week, multi-device enterprise. Al showed a little bit of that, but we're hooking much more and hooking in mobile strategy. That's next Friday, so it's Anders, Al, and myself. And then the other weeks after that, a reminder, lots of different resources, the samples and code snippets, links to those. I put a bit.ly in there, so maybe that's easier for you than all those big, long SourceForge things. So, and then lots of links to Code Rage and Facebook and Twitter and blogs and things of that kind. But if you want to look at the XE4 sample application code snippets in SourceForge, there's the bit.ly. And there it goes to SourceForge, and there's all the different examples, C++, Delphi, FireMonkey, FireMonkey Mobile, Live Mining's modeling, and so on. Here's our email addresses, aolson@embarcadero.com, and there's his blog, /AO. Al Manarino, al.manarino. I think I got the 2 N's and 1 R correct there. And he has his blog. And David I at embarcadero.com, blogs.embarcadero.com/DavidI. And then if you send an email to developerdirect.online@embarcadero.com, it goes to the whole Developer Direct worldwide team. Thank you all for being here for the first episode of Developer Direct. We'll be every Friday, 9 Fridays in a row during Q2. See you next Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Take care, everyone, and thank you, Al. Thank you, Anders.
Thank you.
All right, have a great day, all.
Absolutely. Bye.